Last night I had a nightmare. Not the kind you wake up from and immediately forget, and not the kind that fades once the morning light fills the room. This one stayed with me. Even now, as I sit here trying to explain it, there is a part of me that feels like it never truly ended. It felt real in a way that dreams usually don't. Like my mind wasn't creating something new, but remembering something that had already happened. It began like any normal night. I went to bed later than usual, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, telling myself I would sleep in just a few more minutes. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, with only the soft hum of the fan above me. Eventually, my eyes grew heavy and sleep took over without warning. There was no strange sensation, no feeling of falling, just darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was in my bed. The ceiling looked the same. The shadows on the wall were exactly where they always were. For a brief moment, I felt relieved. But that relief didn't last. Something felt wrong. The air in the room felt heavier, thicker, like it was pressing down on my chest. The silence felt louder than any noise ever could. I tried to move my arms, but they wouldn't respond. I tried again, panic slowly creeping in as I realized my body wasn't listening to me. I knew this feeling. I had experienced sleep paralysis before, and I told myself to stay calm, to wait it out like I always had. But then I heard something that made my heart race. Breathing. Slow, steady breathing, coming from somewhere in the room. It wasn't loud, and at first I almost convinced myself it was my own. Almost. The rhythm was wrong. It was slower than mine, deeper, and it felt closer with every breath. I wanted to turn my head to see where it was coming from, but I couldn't move. My eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling as my mind screamed for my body to respond. That's when I noticed the shadow in the corner of the room. At first, it looked normal, like any shadow cast by furniture in low light. Then it began to stretch upward, slowly and deliberately, as if it knew I was watching it. Time stopped making sense. Seconds felt like minutes, and minutes felt like hours. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it would wake me up. And then, suddenly, I sat upright in bed, gasping for air. The fan was spinning. I could hear distant traffic outside. Everything looked normal again. Relief washed over me, and I laughed quietly, telling myself it was over. But something caught my attention. I looked at the clock on the wall. The numbers weren't changing. The second hand was frozen in place. My stomach dropped. Before I could react, the room went silent again. The fan stopped. The outside noise vanished. The door to my bedroom slowly creaked open, revealing darkness that felt thicker than it should have been. I couldn't see anything standing there, but I knew I was being watched. Then a voice whispered my name. I woke up screaming. This time I was sure I was awake. The sun was beginning to rise, casting soft light across the room. My hands were shaking as I sat there, trying to convince myself it was finally over. I stood up and walked toward the mirror, needing proof that I was really awake. My reflection stared back at me. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then I raised my hand. My reflection didn't move. That was when I realized the truth. This wasn't one nightmare. It was a loop. Every time I thought I had woken up, I was only falling deeper into it. I don't know how many times it happened. Each time felt more real than the last, and each time the fear lingered longer. Eventually, the nightmare stopped chasing me. It stopped trying to scare me. Instead, it just watched. I found myself standing in a long hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. Doors lined the walls, each one looking strangely familiar. As I walked past them, I could hear breathing coming from behind the doors. Not different breathing, but my own. When I stopped in front of one door, I knew what was inside before I even touched the handle. When I opened it, I saw my bedroom again. I was sitting on the bed, staring back at me with eyes that didn't blink. That version of me smiled and spoke without moving its mouth, telling me I had made it further than most. The hallway disappeared behind me, and the door slammed shut. Now there were two of us, and only one could wake up. That's when the truth finally surfaced. I hadn't fallen asleep that night. I had already been dreaming for longer than I could remember. Days, weeks, maybe even longer. Every memory since then felt thin and fragile, like paper soaked in water. The other version of me leaned closer and whispered that when I woke up, it would get to stay. The room shattered into light, and suddenly I was back in my bed. Morning light filled the room. Birds were chirping outside. Everything felt real. I didn't move. I waited. Minutes passed, and nothing happened. Slowly I stood up, testing the floor beneath my feet. It felt solid. I checked the mirror again. My reflection moved when I did. Relief washed over me. But then I noticed the corner of the room. It felt crowded. Not dark, not shadowed, just occupied. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear breathing there. Slow, patient breathing. Like something waiting for the moment I close my eyes again. Maybe I did wake up. Or maybe I was the one left behind. If this story kept you awake tonight, make sure you subscribe to Noxmare for more nightmares that refuse to end. Because the next one might be closer than you think.